Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of We Need to Talk. Today joining me on the show are three of the founders of United Stages Collective. At a time when diversity and representation are being amplified around the world, United Stages Collective is aiming to bring Aboriginal Australian creative excellence to Hollywood. Their goal is to bring a different perspective to the film and television industry, as well as presenting the industry with an opportunity for more intersection and collaboration. Matt Coleman, Madison Prince, and Sam Cook, welcome to the show.
Hi, hello. Thanks for having us.
Of course. I'm really excited to know more about this collective. So let's just go back to the beginning and let me know, and you can each individually talk however you want to share how you came together to collaborate and become the founders for this collective. What was the light bulb for you when you decided, you know what? This is something that we need to create.
Well, I might start just because I'm the kind of grandmother of the story, if you will. I was the creative director on the first Aboriginal theatrical production to come to the United States in full form in LA. We had a theatre production called The 7 Stages of Grieving at Skylight Theatre. And, I think as I kind of tell the story, it's one of those moments where the population of the hidden Aboriginal community in the United States, Aboriginal Australian community, would gravitate. And we sort of found ourselves all at the theatre production, got to talking at the end of the event. I had spotted Matt Coleman in the audience because he had this Aboriginal hoodie on, which I have the same one. So I was like, okay, there's someone who sort of knows. And then found out he's a brother from Australia. And that was, I guess, the genesis of the original gathering where we sort of met. And then the idea really at that point came about because every single one of us had experience and are at various stages in our career in the arts and entertainment industry. So it was about going, okay, well, there is a hidden community here of creative excellence. It takes a lot to be able to leave your, often remote or regional Aboriginal community or urban centre to then travel and migrate to the United States. That was pretty important to sort of mark that, we've got excellent people on the ground here. Let's do something about it.
I just felt a little bit isolated initially. I moved here in late 2015 and I didn't really have a good support network to bounce off of. So eventually when Sam, my mum, moved here, that was kind of the initial startup for me. And then meeting Matt, meeting Julia, and figuring out that we were able to collaborate with each other in different ways. Like I know Matt's an acting coach in certain aspects of his career. So, I've worked alongside him before, and it's just really comforting. It's been comforting knowing that, I have this group of people who just want to do great things.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, and I mean, I can echo the sentiments of both Sam and Madison when it comes to that moving from Australia, which is its own isolated island as is, to somewhere like Los Angeles that doesn't necessarily breed ease of community. Yeah. And especially for a small community, but the, oldest continual culture on the planet of, Aboriginal Australians or like First Nations people, to land in LA and find them is really important. For us culturally, community and, connection to country is really important. And so when you're off country, whether that be in a different part of Australia, but specifically overseas, you kind of feel lost or alone. And so for me, that was a huge sort of hole in my soul, was feeling like I had community or a sense of being as a First Nations man, as a Wiradjuri man, and, meeting both Sam and Madison and Julia as well, and creating this little collective, is just really important for our storytelling.
Absolutely. And I want to talk a little bit about your culture. What are some aspects of your culture that are really important to bring to the film and television industry that people may not be aware of?
I think a big part of that is diversity. When you talk Aboriginal Australia, you're talking over 800 tribal nations. It's
Yeah, which I was so shocked to read. I had absolutely no idea. And I'm sure a lot of people aren't aware of that as well.
Yeah, and you're also, rooting historical accuracy in place. Australia is a black country. Aboriginal people are black people of the world, and, we see ourselves as part of the world's majority. So it's about, just really being able to kind of come forward, but also the uniqueness of our individual stories. As Matt mentioned, his Wiradjuri, we're Nyikina. We're completely different countries, if you will, in the same way as if you were traveling through Europe, you would have different customs and rituals in various parts of the country. So, that I think is an important sort of ground framework. And I think Madison and Matt can absolutely contribute.
I mean, I'm a Nyikina woman, so I'm from Broome, Northwest Australia. Being a Nyikina woman over here, for me, in our community alone, we have so many stories, and even so, Mum is the founder of Black History Month in Australia. So, as a whole, Australia has just this like influx of stories that I think need to be told. And it's, there's been so many great moments. So I think that ties into our cultural history. We've achieved so much. And a part of my legacy is wanting to bring these forward.
And Matt, for you, culturally, what is very important to bring to the States?
Culturally, for me, it is that thing that, Sam had touched on, which is that there are sort of 800 different countries or nations across Australia which have each their own totems and cultural practices and, women's business and men's business and all sorts of things where it's not just Aborigine blanket or Aboriginal blanket, the same way as you can never just be like, oh, you're European, full stop. Can you speak European? I think it's really important for the world to see that, Indigenous or First Nations Australians are one in the same in terms of our ideas, our connection to the earth and to the spirit and to each other and community is really important as an umbrella. But then we have our independent individual stories as mob or country, which depending on whether you're saltwater people or, desert people, there are different stories, song lines, cultural practice, which I think now more than ever, it's important to be telling those stories.
And Matt, I'm just going to continue with you on this question. When you came to the States, were you surprised by race relations at all? Or were you slightly aware of how perceptions were of different marginalized groups in this country?
I think I don't know why I am, but I am always so surprised by race relations or lack of understanding or empathy or, the thing for me is wherever you are, you don't know what you don't know. And so, there are some people who are ignorant, and then there are just some people who are racist. And so race relations I found very interesting. I sort of felt that I knew a little bit about it. I'd worked on on sort of a comparative study between what were the two? Oh God! Here I go talking about something, and I've forgotten what they were. It's The Longest Yard, which is I think Fred Diagua, and what was the comparative study we did? No Sugar, which is an Australian Indigenous piece, and sort of talking about the race relations comparatively between sort of Black Australia and Black America and slavery and things like that, specifically. But talking in more current times, the race relations the world over is terrible. But I think there is a huge sort of polarity between those who are accepting of race and differences and those who are absolutely not. It's more divisive. Or it has become more divisive over the past couple of years, given the environment we've all been marinated in here in America. So,
yeah, and I think I think the arts have an interesting position, but kind of a responsibility to be leaders in bridging that gap, because arts do connect everybody, right? And I think that that's what's so beautiful about what you guys are doing, not just from a cultural perspective, but also I feel like it'll bring more awareness even to what's happening in America, because you're showing people how to have the intersection with different cultures and different races. And I'm hoping that it'll, spread across the industry as a whole. And we're working so hard in this country to have more diversity and more inclusion. So, Sam, I'm going to direct this question to you. When it comes to diversity and inclusion within the film and television industry, what are your main goals with this collective in the messaging that you're trying to send and the conversations that you're having?
For me, it's being present in the space, but it's also holding space for our international people of colour, our diversity and equity spectrum. And it's such a diverse, loaded space unto itself. Picking up on what Madison said, there's so many stories to tell. And also picking up on what Matt just said, the identity politics is interesting, but it's also a big chunk, as I, continue to dive through Australia's Black history, that, few people even know that there's such a direct connection between the United States and the civil rights movements of Australia and Black America. And we go back to Garvey. So, to be able to tell these stories in an environment that's now opening up and seeing the value of diversity, the words that we're able to contribute to the page, the way in which we're able to frame them with, I think, our unique perspective is coming from the earth. So a really earthed and sort of grounded perspective makes it a really exciting time, I think, for all of us. And, one of the points with founding the United Stages Collective is that often we're intersected with, and, we come to the table as the other. We wanted to drive an initiative where we, sat at the table and brought everyone to our campfire so that people could come and learn and share. And, we create joy, which is arts and entertainment.
And Madison, you're an actress, correct?
Yes.
So for you, have you felt for your culture and your people that there has been representation on TV and film? And if there has been for you, how have you perceived it? Because I know for me, as someone who's a singer and an actress as well, I often do see Black Americans on television, but I'm not always happy with the way that they are being represented.
So in terms of Australia, I think the representation of Nugina people is little to none. And then in terms of Aboriginal people as a whole, it's very stereotypical. It's that kind of the trauma roles that are being, replayed and replayed and replayed.
Yeah.
And then over in Hollywood, there is, again, little to no representation of Indigenous Australians.
How do you want to change some of those stereotypes?
I think it's perfectly normal for Indigenous Australians to, come in and just play everyday roles. Like it could be a comedy, it could be a romantic comedy. It doesn't have to be the stereotypical, like I said, the replaying of when the missionaries came in and ripped the families apart. It doesn't need to be that all the time. And I think that's what the world sees of Australia. And I don't know if the world is able to kind of look past that at this point in terms of entertainment. I know in Australia itself, there's things like there are certain kind of shows on the rise that are maybe messing with stereotypes a little, but I don't think they're easily accessible to the rest of the world. I think it's a very small community that's, watching these and is the audience for this.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's really just those traumatic roles that I want to get rid of. And I, as an actress, we've written material that counteracts that it tells new stories.
Yeah. And this could be for any of you, but what has the response been to you bringing this collective to the States and wanting to have more representation for your people within the industry? And I ask that because for people of color in America, they're also still striving for that representation. So have you had any pushback that's kind of like, hey, wait your turn, let people of color that are from America get their chance before we start bringing people from other countries in to have their representation?
I haven't seen that yet. I'm sure. Yeah.
Good. I'm glad. I just wanted to know like what the response has been, because I could see that happening. That's why I'm asking.
I'm sure it's out there. There's always, the space for debate around all of identity issues and whose turn is it, and, representation of First Nations identity, and where that sits in the ecology of, the United States, for example. But I think, especially being in LA, there's a universal platform for stories to be told. I think what we're seeing now is more of an acceptance for people to slide into roles affirming a bit more of their identity. And an example of that is if you look at old Hollywood, where there was a movement to anglicize your name, to kind of conduct yourself in a certain way, almost misrepresenting your own nationalities for the purpose of securing the roles. I think what we see now is that there is more openness for people to be more authentic and stand in their kind of truth in the system, and then bring their own representation to those roles.
I do. I find it interesting. I think in terms of wait your turn, is it my turn? I think really, if we, cut the fat, it's anyone else's turn that is not, white cisgender. Essentially, where to go there. It's diversity is key for, arts in general, but I think we've definitely got to that sort of intersection now where Hollywood specifically and those stories that are being told have to be told, by people of color, by, people who have disabilities, the LGBTQIA plus community. Those stories have to be told. We're all humans, right? We're all having a human experience, but the stories that are being told are very, very white. And that only represents the tiniest percentage of the population anywhere. And so what I'm seeing is that whether it is us as First Nations Australians saying, hey, we're going to create a platform for First Nations Australians, but then First Nations people from all around the world, is us creating space for our black and brown brothers and sisters to come and stand with us and by us and say, it's our turn as well. And I think with all of the incredible stories that can be told in the world, there is space for everyone. Yes, I absolutely agree. There's place at the table for everybody. And if not, then you just build your own table, right? Exactly. That's right. Yeah. Just add it. Just absolutely. Put some more on there, right? The other thing that you said, yes, a lot of the stories that are being told are more white centered. But I think also when you do make the attempts to have diversity inclusion, it's also a white perspective of that diversity. And that's what's so frustrating for me, because you don't want to see a story told about Aboriginal people that's told by a white American, because it's not going to be authentic. And I think that's also the struggle that a lot of people of color in the industry are having, is that, yes, we see ourselves on screen at times, but it's your version of what you think we are or should be. So how do we get past that as artists and as creators and as producers and as writers? What are you doing to change that? Because it's not just about people in front of the camera, it's also behind the camera that's just as important.
Yes, so I'm co-writing Conscientious Objector, which is a family story, and I'm co-writing it with my mum, Sam. Conscientious Objector, for me, because I wrote a role in it for myself, which coincidentally is the role of my grandma. So I'm telling my grandma's story, very personal for me. I felt also as an actress, I was kind of done clawing my way to the top. I wanted to get my own content out there. I wanted to tell stories that were meaningful to me. So that was part of the reason how and why, Conscientious Objector began. But it's also just meaningful as a family story, like I said. And we've written the first draft of that. It's a feature film.
Yeah, well, I guess picking up on that story and the lens, I mean, it's telling a piece of history that is little unknown, I feel, but also undervalued when you look at the premise of the story being centred around the Aboriginal experience of standing up in objection to the Vietnam War. But at that time in Australia, Aboriginal people were classified in the category of flora and fauna, so we were considered plants and animals, which was the basis of the conscientious objection, being not recognised in your own country, therefore not willing to participate in a war that did not involve Aboriginal people, but also identifying that there's probably more of a empathy and humility toward the Vietnamese communities in their struggle at that time as Aboriginal people, but then to be told that you either go to war or you go to jail. Which is the kind of catalyst of the storyline. And then within that story, tracing two of the three individuals who were involved in the conscientious objection, their journey to the Vietnam War as young Aboriginal men and what that represented for them, how they intersected with Black and Indigenous soldiers from the United States, being on the same base and really navigating a war within a war at times around identity. So, stories like this, traditionally, they don't exist in the canon of Australia and the United States, but being able to base this on and lift off real characters and true history to explore what this does look like, I think, for us in the industry at this time right now is an example of just how we can elevate each other and diversify our narrative in Hollywood.
I love just simply the idea of people creating their own content. And I think now in 2021, there's so many opportunities to do that and to get it seen and to raise funds and get people behind it. And I think that's actually probably scaring some of the big studios. How people are so self-sufficient now and can get things made and they don't really need the backing to get these stories told. So I love that you are very proactive and wanting to tell your own history. Also, because as I'm just listening, I'm like, I don't know any of this stuff and I love learning it. And I think that is one of the ways that we do bridge that gap with race relations and with understanding is just by listening to other people's stories. It's so, so important to listen to other people's stories. So I want to go back to you, Matt, because you're also an actor as well, correct?
Yes, correct.
When did you come to LA at first?
When did I get here? September of 2018.
Oh, so you're still kind of a baby LA.
Yeah, I'm green. I'm very green.
I love it. So what has your experience been like working in the industry coming from Australia?
The industry here is, while it is film and television, and I studied theatre, so that was more my world. But coming to LA is more a film television space. It's still very different to Australia in terms of the team that you're needing to build here in order to just get in the door, right? In Australia, you could have an agent who is also your manager that will do film, television, commercial, print, theatre. It just does it all encompassing. And here you just got to whack
Yeah.
with all of, build a team. And this is just from the practicality of being able to submit yourself for something.
Yeah.
And then, there's the whole rigmarole of, casting directors not being able to use their own imagination to see you as a doctor. You have to have a headshot of you in scrubs or
a white jacket, the stethoscope. You actually have to be the character. Yeah.
So there's already, they're like, I haven't even learned a line yet. And it's been all of this work. I think the hustle is very different here. The because of how hard it is to break into the industry here, people are really they're jumping from gig to gig or from class to class. In Australia, I find you'll do your 3-year acting course, and then if you were lucky enough to get the one break, they just recycle you through all of the shows, and you've done your NIDA or you've done your BCA, and there's not a lot of continual classwork. So as an actor here, it's hard and it's expensive.
Yes. Yes.
But also when you get there, it can be super rewarding.
Absolutely.
But again, just going back to race relations and color and stories and things like that, I am fairer skinned and very much European passing. And so stepping in for a role as a person of color, stereotypically, I'm not even going to be seen. And that falls in here. And also in Australia, more so with the Australian stories that are being told, as Madison spoke on earlier. I am a fair-skinned blackfellow, so it's my story to tell, but the stories that are being told are stories that require a more stereotypical look in order to make it viable for people to watch and successful for the show.
Right. Comparatively, that has to be so difficult to transition from.
Yeah.
And for you, Sam and Madison, how comparatively working in the industry in Australia has it been for you to transition now into being in Los Angeles?
I definitely agree with what Matt said in terms of, in Australia, you study, you do your X amount of years, and then it's almost like that's just done with, and then you're off into the industry and you're not focused on that aspect anymore. But here it's continuous study. Like for me, I've done a range of courses. I've studied at Stella Adler. I was doing online classes last year with the Identity School of Acting, hoping to move into Richard Lawson Studios soon. Corf Voice Studios, voice lessons to learn the American accent. So it's a whole range of things that you have to, that are requirements. You can't fall short on that. So that has been...
And then you add social media to the mix, and that's a whole different conversation, right?
Yeah. I was going to say, though, once you kind of get used to the flow of things, you know what is required of you. And, you do what you have to do, and you keep doing it until you get to where you need to be.
And Sam, from your perspective with what you do,
Yeah, so for me, I've had a very I started early. I was a young child when I kind of knew exactly what I wanted to do, which I continued to this point onwards. For me, it was the one thing moving here was, do I lose the legacy and currency that I've built in my career over the last, because really I kind of professionalized, if you will, at the age of about 15, 16. So does all that matter when I get here? Will I have to, begin at the bottom again? Where do I place?
Yeah, start over, yeah.
I found that's not the case, though. People are really excited once they hear, some of the work that I have done, the work that I am doing, where the value is in terms of my story and how that can look over here. So I've been really thankful for that, because that obviously was a concern. And, just taking that thread forward, I think, is just always been me on, continuing to be bold, big and brave around my own ideas, and not necessarily see that there's a barrier or a limit to them. So, I'm not done yet. I've got a lot more to go on, but
of course.
Just building off that, I think important for me was absolutely to see how all of the value of my career could translate to the US market.
Yeah. So big picture goals for United Stages Collective, for looking a year, 5 years in advance. What do you see and what are you hoping to accomplish?
The United Stages Collective holding space for inbound artists who are really hungry and passionate around their career, willing to kind of translate that into the US market. We have people back home who are actively making their moves towards the United States film and television industry. So it's important to have us here so that they know that, the space is held for their arrival as well. It's about celebrating everyone's success at that point. That's a big outcome. Intersection, I feel, is vital. We want to work with excellence of all colour. We're really excited that we're in a place where we can do that and, conjure the wind around brilliance and Black excellence in all our forms. I think that's important. And also, continuing to hold space and elevate the platform for our colleagues, our brothers and sisters here from the First Nations communities. And our experience by being able to be an ally to other First Nations community means that also creates, a reciprocity and a protocol that we, are really supportive of and value as part of our own cultural processes. So, these are some of the things that we're rallying around and just creating great work. In 5 years' time, there'll be Conscientious Objector on the screen. There'll be new work from Matt Coleman. We've got a lot in the works. And I think the team is small but mighty, but it's about amplifying hidden communities and really elevating all of our voices.
Beautiful. I love it. I'm so excited for all of you. I think there's never a better time to have this, and it's very much so needed. And again, as we said before, there is truly a place at the table for everyone, but you guys are building your own table, and I'm here for it. Can you let everyone know where they can follow you and keep up with you individually and United Stages Collective as well? Madison, I'll start with you.
Yes, so you can follow my personal page, Madison S. Prince. Madison SPRINCE. And then the United Stages Collective page is, and this is Instagram, is United Stages Collective, all one word is the handle.
You can find me. It's Matt Coleman on Instagram at Matt Coleman Official, Matt with 2 T's. Okay,
so I'm Sam Cook, and if you look me up, you're going to find the other Sam Cook who we all know and love. I have an acronym that I've been using for a while, so it's KMBA Creative, and that's the name of the agency that I'm running. So you can find me at kmbacreative.com. But collectively, you can find all of us easily through the United Stages Collective website, where all our assets and progress is going to be measured, and that site will grow to be a living, breathing space for all of us.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. I really enjoyed talking with all of you.
We look forward to doing some work with you, Malynda.
Yes, absolutely. I look forward to meeting you all in person. And to the listeners, make sure you follow them on social media and subscribe to We Need to Talk. And we'll talk to you again real soon. Bye.